Hello all, it's the Old Geek, and this week I thought I'd have a little look through an old White Dwarf magazine, issue number 14, August/September 1979, still 60 pence, released at a time when 7-year-old me would have been anxiously counting down the minutes towards my 8th birthday, because those are the years when age is more than a number. So the cover, it's bright, it's colourful. I think it would jump off the shelf. Certainly that lizard looks pretty awesome. The figure riding him could do with more clothes. And is that a white afro? That looks a bit odd. But no, it's not. It's not a terrible cover. The only issue I've got with this cover, look down here, is how clear the text isn't. It's more readable than most dragon covers, but it's still it's yellow on orange. Silly, 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 silly. So let's move in. Let's move in. Okay, so this is an issue where most of the figures you see are going to be largely unclothed. Mostly naked people in this advert as well. Good, I can see where they're going here. As always, White Dwarf has a clump of adverts at the start, and they're typically pretty good adverts. Nerds like lists of prices, so we can go, yeah, I can save 10 pence if I buy it from there. Yeah. And oh, look at this one, 5 pence cheaper. Oh, the postage on that's a bit not. Yeah. If I go this way, I'll be 2 pence better off. You know I'm right. You know I'm right. Citadel miniatures. Would anybody like to go through a list of these old adverts and see how miniature prices have gone up from year to year? I wouldn't. Maybe if I had a bit of time. Alright. Great fantasy role-playing from Judges Guild. Lots of stuff. Lists again. Lists and lists of stuff. Okay, so we're on page 7 when we get to the list of contents. The cover is by Emmanuel. Right. Right, this cover is from the individual that brought us the Fiend Folio cover. Yes, now I can understand why you've got those bright colours, because the original Fiend Folio really did jump off the shelf. The use of colours it was fabulous. So I can fully understand that now. Okay, let's have a little look at this editorial, because the word conventions is something I see in there, and we've got Games Expo coming up at the end of this month. Lots of us are going to get together and have a good time. Hopefully, a few beers, maybe a bit of gaming, spending money we don't have. Looking forward to it. There's a fundamental difference between American and British games conventions, the difference, alas, being to the detriment of British gamers. Having just returned from Origins 79, the largest of the American conventions, I thought readers on this side of the Atlantic would like to know what they're missing out on. Firstly, the American conventions are usually held at a university campus with relatively inexpensive dormitory accommodation and last for 3 days. The UK Games Expo is at the National Exhibition Centre. Parking is expensive. The hotel that's on the site would have been fully booked 6 months ago, and the prices would have been double what they would normally be. So you'd be looking at probably £200 a night to stay there, which is huge, in my opinion. I mean, I don't go to hotels very often, so I don't really know, but I think you're talking with food, beer, events, travel. If you want to go and stay in the hotel for the entire weekend, you're probably going to spend the best part of £1,000. I live 12 to 15 miles from the NEC, so 1 day of parking, because I will be driving on one of the days. I'm going for 2 days. Entries, food. I'm budgeting about £250 to £300, and that's with me doing my usual silly spending on buying things I don't need. So there's a big difference. On that basis, it can be appreciated that the conventions must be much bigger and better than our conventions. 3-day attendance costs £5 and you have to pay to enter competitions. But there are over 100 competitions and big prizes for the winners donated by the manufacturers. The manufacturers also save all their new releases for the major conventions to add to the excitement, and with seminars, demonstrations, 80 trade stands and excellent facilities, it's no surprise that 3,000 to 5,000 gamers attend the larger conventions. Well, you can multiply that by 10 nowadays. The one at the NEC is going to be, I think it was 35, 40,000 last year, it's a good size. It's not as big as the biggest ones in America, I believe, but it's still big, and there's a lot of the major publishers going to be there. The question is, however, does the British gamer want to enter into the spirit and expense of a 3-day convention? And would the British games manufacturers and agents support it? Well, judging by... yeah, I know it's 45 years later. Quite simply, the success of the Games Expo says yes. Right, expanding universe as a traveller feature, Lair of the White Wyrm, a complete RuneQuest mini-scenario, White Dwarf interview, Gary Gygax, the man who made it all possible. Then you've got Fiend Factory, Open Box, Molten Magic, Treasure Chest Letters, News, Games Clubs and Help. And we go from this is page, was it 7? To page 25. 32-page magazine, is it? Well, we'll find out, but that's fairly typical for White Dwarf. About half is adverts, about half is features. So here's a traveller one. Not for me. For my sci-fi loving nerdy friends. So I mean, it should be nice and clear on screen. So if you want to read the article, it is there. I'm only scrolling through it fairly slowly. I won't be reading. I don't know what it all means, to be honest. I've never read Traveller. Right, let's go to the Fiend Factory. What we got? Gurgotch. Never heard of it. A demon elephant. Okay, is this based on the those big elephant type things from the Lord of the Rings, perhaps? In form, the beast resembles a large black elephant with big saucer-like glowing white eyes and a tail resembling a trident. Yeah, it's a bit more demonic, isn't it? Okay, well, if you want to throw big elephants at people, here's your big charge. It's 4d10 damage. Ouch. And there is a breath weapon as well. The Mind Web is a group entity which grows by absorbing the minds of characters or monsters which have human intelligence or above. So this didn't make it through, but at the start of UK 4, When a Star Falls, the party encounters something called a memory web, which I believe will be work similar to this. I mean, it isn't presented in the same way, but I imagine it will work similar. And I really like that memory web. I think it's a really good way of starting an adventure. Some reviewers went, nah, I don't like that start. No, I think it's one of the best starts to a published adventure that there has ever been. You kill the memory web, and those are trapped in it. Their memories bombard your characters, so you get all their images of their memories in your mind, and that tells you about the quest that they were on. Well, for me, it was just an excuse to print out lots of memories, roll them up into balls of paper, and throw them at the players. So that might be why. Energy Cyclone. It's like almost like an air elemental. There's a vortex in the Fiend Folio, wasn't there? These are all high hit dice things. Gazer. Strange relative of the beholder. Only 7 of these creatures are known to exist. 15d8. AC minus 4. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Don't mess. Ice Maiden. Ooh. Her hair is composed entirely of icicles, and her eyes are penetrating light blue with no discernible iris or pupil. Nice and spooky. Generally high-level monsters, though, in this Fiend Factory. And isn't that often the case that when we were younger, we made new monsters, we always made them really powerful. Yes, these'll kill the players, won't they? But no, I think so. The Ice Maiden, certainly. Travel. Okay, these are reviews. Open box. Ballastor's Barracks. The Chaosium. Oh yes, I've seen this one before, haven't I? Yes, yes. Would this title fly nowadays? Obviously, it means something else in Old English and Old Irish. Doesn't mean the same as in over in America, though we are slowly adopting the American meaning. But it has other meanings in English. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get kicked off YouTube, but I think that is a good title for an adventure, taking into account the era in which this was published and what the word would have meant in England back then. 5 out of 10 for Dragon Crown, 7 out of 10 for the other one. Okay. Lair of the White Wyrm, a RuneQuest mini scenario by John Bethel. Now, I don't play RuneQuest. I believe the mechanics are similar to its basic role playing. So it's similar to Call of Cthulhu, which I love. So I'll understand what these mean. Mostly, I don't know this bit over here, this L, R, whatever, but total hit points 40. Yeah, I mean, I can understand this is a strong monster, fairly large, decent damage from a sting. Explodes on dying, doing 3d6 damage to anyone within 15-foot radius. That's brutal, given that most characters. I'm coming from the Call of Cthulhu angle here. Most characters will begin with somewhere between 9 and 14 hit points on average, most sort of 11 or 12. So 3d6 damage is, yeah, it's rough. Of course, in Call of Cthulhu, characters don't gain any more hit points. I don't know if they do in RuneQuest, or if there's any way to absorb it. But it'd be interesting to read through this adventure and see if it's easily converted over to D&D in some way, shape, or form. I have just seen the in 3, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're the names of zombies. Right. A little bit of humour. Coral snake. They're pretty poisonous, aren't they? They're pretty poisonous. I think the one thing about the coral snake that is particularly deadly is that it has such an inoffensive bite. Most people who are bitten by a coral snake don't know until the poison starts to take effect. So, yeah, that's why you're in trouble. And the poison is pretty damn potent. But it's those tiny fangs that you little more than a pinprick. And there's that old saying about red and yellow and black and yellow, or red and black, or whatever. Doesn't always work. Not always true. Mostly true, but not always. Right, the White Wyrm itself. See, 25 hit points might not look like a lot if you're used to D&D. But if you are in a game which uses the basic role-playing system, that's tons. That's tons. And bite, 1d10 plus 4d6. You don't want to be bitten by that. Treasure chest. Open for contributions relating to D&D additional rules, character classes, magic systems, objects, tricks and traps, etc. The pits. When the door A is opened, a plain 10-foot square room is seen. However, there is no floor, just a 10-foot deep pit. The opening of the door activates a mechanism that slides the floor C across at a speed of 1 foot per second. Once this has been done, the room appears as a plain room with a solid floor. Once the floor is in place, another mechanism is activated and a 10-foot cube moves across at a speed of 1 foot per second. When it reaches a point 1 foot away from the section of wall E, the wall swings back so the block pushes anything in the pit into the second pit. So you go into that pit, that slides across and pushes you into that one. And then blocks this. Heh! And there's a magnet on the ceiling. Old school traps are brutal. Brutal. So what happens when the door is opened again? The magnet deactivates, dropping anyone 20 foot into the pit below. So it just keeps pushing them into that pit. Yes, it's like a little production line. Slowly farming them into that bottom pit. Very, very nasty. The Bathhouse of the Pharaoh, a complex for the first dungeon level. Okay. 3 wolves. Drainage holes in the floor. It's nice you have little bits like this are helpful. Little bits like this are helpful. The bell room. Ring the bell. I'm not even going to attempt to decipher that. I might come back and have a look. Letters. Dear White Dwarf, I'm not going to argue with Michael Stoner's contention that the standard of the Fiend Factory has deteriorated. This is not my own view. But in the end, such a judgment is highly subjective, and I'm sorry Michael feels the way he does. However, there are a few points on which I would take issue. Michael speaks of super powerful monsters that can kill at a stroke. Well, look at the example in this issue. They're powerful. They are powerful. The AC business is more difficult. AC2 new is about the same as AC2 old, but AC9 equates with AC10 new. Yes, it does. What about the middle range? Am I right in altering AC5 to AC6? Look, we're talking little 5% tweaks. And yeah, I don't think it's as important as Don is making out here. Are unarmoured humanoids AC9 all the time? No, they don't have to be. Don't have to be. You can tweak them. You can tweak things. There isn't a single AC10 monster in the entire monster manual. Don, that is because the monster manual was written using OD&D rules. It wasn't written... Okay, it says AD&D on the cover, but all the alignments, all the various modifiers and the armor classes come out of OD&D. So, I'm afraid, Don, that... Yeah, you've got to take that into account. You might come up against a goblin that's found some scraps of chain for AC5 instead of the usual AC6. Deal with it. It happens. You might come up against a rather rotund goblin that's not as dexterous. His armour doesn't fit properly. He'll be AC8. the idea is to vary things, keep things interesting. Let's have a little look. I shall continue to refer to a certain diminutive species. Oh, dear White Dwarf, the monster mark is dead. Long live the monster mark. You know, I didn't even look for monster mark this time. I forgot. That's because it's gone. Hurrah! Hurrah! No monster mark. Yay! Yay! Um... I shall continue. I'm going to read this bit. I shall continue to refer to a certain diminutive species once misidentified by an apparently familiar person around your office as Hobbit, despite the preferences of TSR, or should it be the preferences of the Tolkien copyright holders? One could almost say such usage is habitual. Yes, not daring to continue further. Wise, wise. Let's keep going. Interview with Gary Gygax. It's a fairly lengthy interview, so I'll leave it on screen. You should be able to zoom in and view it. In fact, there it is. That's it. Looks like it's all of it. Oh, it moves on to the next page. There he is. Old Egg himself. Moving on to the next page. Can I get all this on as well? There you go. If you want to read that interview, just pause here. There it is. Don't say I never do anything for you. Games clubs. Help. I was going to look to see. I have to look to see if there's any in Birmingham. No. No. No wonder I never heard of it. No, never. Okay, I was 7 years old, but I never heard of it. Games clubs. Oh, there's one. Rugeley Lichfield. Right. Okay. Games, D&D and some other games. Saturday afternoons or Wednesdays and Tuesday evenings. Shall I get in touch with Brian Asprey? And I wonder if he's still at that address. And shall I... It's better not to be. Of course he's not. But... I'm not going to go and knock on that address. Because that's only just up the road from me. One in Nottingham as well, that's not too far. It's about an hour away from where I am. But players aged 18 to 25 preferred. Sorry, I was 7. I'd have been a little arsehole at the table as well. And that is it. That is it. More interviews, more adverts, which are mostly lists, which is good because that's what nerds like. And we come to the end of the magazine. 32 pages. But what do we get in those 32 pages? Well, we've got some adventure ideas. Yes, there was quite a lot of travel at the start. Again, White Dwarf is suffering because it's a 32-page format, and half those pages are adverts. So it's only really got 16 pages for its features, its letters, and all that sort of stuff. And it's trying to be a bit of everything. So as a D&D player here, I would have read the Gary Gygax interview. I'd have probably had a good look at those example scenarios. I like the idea of those example scenarios. I think they're great. And the monsters. And, yeah, okay. It doesn't feel like a lot of D&D, but there's opportunity in there. There's fantasy in there. So it's convertible. So, yeah, not a bad little issue. Not their best, but it's nice to see the scenarios and the maps coming into the magazine now. The cover's decent. Presentation, as always with White Dwarf, is very slick, very neat, very easy to read. So, Hope you enjoyed this little read through. I've been the Old Geek, and I'll see you in the next one.